Hi there, and welcome to the Fantasy Fire and Ice podcast. Today is Friday, October 6th, TGIF. My name is Chris Crawford. I am joined by my good buddy, Drew Silva. Before we get started, we do want to offer our condolences to everybody who faced DJ Moore yesterday. I'd love to tell you it gets better. I'd love to say that these things happen, but you're probably looking at a loss this week, Drew.
Yeah, absolutely. He looks incredible. As you know, I told you before the show on Thursday. It seems like anytime you're getting points in the NFL, like just talking about the spread, like it seems like the Commanders should have been the winner in that game. But on Thursday nights, if the Bears are getting +6, just take the points and take the Bears, because the wild stuff can happen. And hey, the Commanders, the commies tried to make a comeback down the stretch, but just didn't really work out. DJ Moore had I think Al Michaels put it well, like he had a career in a whole night.
I think somebody pointed out that he is now like 118th all time in Bears receiving yardage, which kind of says more about what's going on with Chicago Bears passing history than it does necessarily DJ Moore. But that was a very fun one and good for the Bears. Like, they should have won last week. They win this week. They're 2-3. And their pizza style's better than St. Louis. I'm just going to say it right now. I like
the deep dish or the tavern style.
The tavern style is what I actually like. But
yeah, the tavern, I agree.
I'll eat some casserole. I like some casserole with a little crust on it too, as long as the ingredients are fresh.
Yeah. If I'm like feeling really depressed, some pizza casserole that hits. Take a nap.
If you face DJ Moore this week, you probably are feeling a little bit depressed. All right, we're going to do this like a normal show. There is no baseball today, but there is a bunch of baseball tomorrow. We will start the ALDS and the NLDS. So we're going to give you our stacks, our pitchers to use, and take a look at some stuff that's happening before. Drew, right before we started recording, you were telling me some weather stuff. What exactly is going on Saturday?
I mean, a lot can change in 24 hours or more than 24 hours. We're recording this on Friday morning, but everything looks free and clear. Weather blowing in at Baltimore for Rangers at Orioles. Obviously, Twins Astros could play in, with a roof if they need to. But Phillies at Braves, the wind is supposed to be blowing out at about 13 miles an hour at the start of game time. So we could see some offense in that one. And yeah, we'll get into all these matchups as we go through and talk about our stacks and our starting pitchers. Los Angeles for Dodger Stadium, it's going to be gorgeous for that game.
Of course it is. And, they'll get there 35 minutes late, but it will be rocking once it happens in those ugly mustard yellow seats that are even more ugly. If you ever have a chance to go down to Glendale and watch their spring training, those honey mustard seats are especially
kind of like it. I kind of like it.
It's different.
It's like this. It's supposed to be the sand, kind of, right? Like it's supposed to look like a beach.
Sure, it doesn't look like a beach. It looks like something I want to put a McNugget in more than anything else. But that's actually it's 6:33 here, and I'm craving chicken McNuggets, which tells you how my life is going. Chris Crawford, you are 40 years old. All right, so let's start with some stacks, Drew. And I think this is interesting because we're kind of going head-to-head on a few of these things. But why don't you tell me that first lineup that you're looking to stack?
Rangers at Orioles. I'm going with Corey Seager, Evan Carter, the great Evan Carter, Nathaniel Lowe, and Leody Taveras. I like the Rangers to keep it rolling in the ALDS, at least in game one, but also maybe this entire series. They could certainly put it all together like they did in the wild card series to spoil things for the American League East champions. It's not much of like a spoiler either. The Orioles are just barely a favorite in the series at most sports books. And actually, the Orioles have the lowest percentage to win the World Series of the remaining teams by Fangraphs current postseason odds. The lowest percentage is the Orioles, which is kind of surprising. That has a lot to do with, maybe the non-elite pitching staff and a young and inexperienced lineup. And just speaking of this ALDS matchup, you could make the argument the Rangers are better on paper in a lot of or like most areas than Baltimore offensively. The regular season numbers, Orioles combined team OPS plus was 107. The Rangers team OPS plus was 113, 233 home runs for Texas, 183 homers for Baltimore, a difference of 74 total runs scored with Texas on top. Kyle Bradish, the game one starter for the Orioles, had a breakout year at age 26, 27, and was awesome in his final two full length starts. He threw like 2 innings in his final outing just to keep him fresh. But is he a bankable guy in his first career postseason outing? I don't
Good
know.
question. Yeah.
Texas had the third highest team OPS against righties this season, behind only the Braves and Dodgers. So I don't know. I'll take the left-handed hitting outfield phenom that I talked about, Evan Carter, to continue his incredible postseason run. I'll pay up for Corey Seager because when he's in the lineup and healthy, that dude can do serious damage. And then throw in Nate Lowe and Leody Taveras to make it a slightly cheaper stack. A lot of options to choose from up and down the lineup. But I think it could be wise to target the left-handed bats who performed better than righties against Kyle Bradish this year. Baltimore's rotation was good down the stretch. Bradish very much included, Grayson Rodriguez, Kyle Gibson, John Means. But that's a group that could suddenly get exposed a bit in the postseason, and especially by this Texas lineup. And the Orioles bullpen has some interesting arms, but it's definitely not the most proven bunch.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call. And it would, we talked beforehand. That was the lineup I was thinking. I was fine with you stealing them because there's some other ones that I like going for sure. But and it's also worth pointing out, this is, I think, the most even series on paper. And Vegas seems to agree. I'll go over the betting odds real quick to advance in these next rounds. We've got Baltimore against Texas. Baltimore is minus 115. Texas is minus 105. For Astros Twins, Astros minus 160. Twins plus 135. NLDS Atlanta minus 170. Philadelphia plus 145. And then the biggest favorite is the Dodgers minus 205. Diamondbacks plus 175. And that is one of the reasons why I am going to be stacking this Dodgers lineup. Merrill Kelly has had a couple of okay starts against the Dodgers this year, but he's also had some real clunkers. And I am just betting on this Dodgers lineup to go, as the kids used to say, ham. I am expecting a big offensive effort from this team, and they're going to need it because I have some question marks about the starting pitching. But I'm going to go with Will Smith, Freddie Freeman, Max Muncy, and assuming he's in the lineup, James Outman. If he's not in the lineup, maybe take a cheap Jason Hayward or someone of that ilk. Lots of players to expose here, or that makes sense to be into your lineup anyway. Expose, probably not the right term, but you know what I'm saying. I really like the Dodgers in this series. We'll give our predictions at the very end of who's going to advance, but I really like what the Dodgers have done this year offensively. And, you can even risk Mookie Betts being in there if you want to go more expensive. He's been so fantastic all year, but I like the Dodgers to get off to a nice start on Saturday.
And I'm coming right back at you with Diamondbacks at Dodgers. Ketel Marte, Christian Walker, Lourdes Gurriel, and Gabriel Moreno. And yeah, this is certainly a contrarian move going with the Diamondbacks. As a team, they're rated as the biggest betting long shot of the remaining clubs to win the World Series. I think it's right now at plus 1,400. Yeah. And, plenty of DFS lineups will have Corbin Carroll as like a standalone guy because he's been so good throughout the season and was so good in the wild card series against Milwaukee. I don't know that this is the matchup to pay the cost with left-hander Clayton Kershaw going for the Dodgers. There are some notable lefty-righty splits this year for Carroll. He mashed righties as a rookie, as a left-handed hitting rookie, but more mediocre against those pesky southpaws. I like Marte, Walker, Gurriel, and Moreno to do work against Kershaw, though, and to be able to fit in like a top price starting pitcher, which we'll get into, or even some top price standalone hitters. I think you have to be a little creative with your stacking if you want to, depending on, you can structure this in a lot of different ways. But I like the contrarian play of going with the Diamondbacks. I should note here that Gabriel Moreno left Wednesday's wild card series game 2 clincher with he got hit on the head with Bryce Terang's backswing in the second inning and left a few innings later, but he was cleared of a concussion on Thursday. He's expected to start at catcher for Arizona in game one of the NLDS on Saturday. He gets like 2 full days of rest before this series starts. I think he'll be fine. Moreno hit a homer in game one against Milwaukee. He's an impressive young catcher that's really taking a leap and could put his name on the map here in October. Ketel Marte is hot. Christian Walker can do serious damage when he's in a groove, and it looks like he might be. And then Lourdes Gurriel as a more reasonably priced guy with some pop. You could look at Tommy Pham too, but he admitted that he's been battling turf toe. That's why he's been limited to DH duties over the last few weeks. So definitely not at full strength right now. And to me, Kershaw is beatable at age 35. His career postseason ERA is 4.22. I had to say it. And we'll see on the Dodgers bullpen, like Brusdar Graterol has been lights out. I think he's thrown 25 scoreless innings dating back to July. He's retired 25 batters in a row dating back to September 9th. A lot of these Dodgers relievers finish pretty strong, but it's not like the most lockdown bullpen they've ever brought into October. Let's go Diamondbacks, man. Yeah, you mentioned those series odds. Dodgers minus 205, D-backs plus 175. The biggest gap on the board. I'd put them on upset alert, man. At least in game one, I think that the Diamondbacks could come out hot and swinging. And I just don't really trust Kershaw right now. They've managed him well with some nagging injuries throughout the year, but October Kershaw, I don't know. I don't know.
I respect everything you just said, and I respond with it with the just hardest of passes, man. Just the hardest of passes. I do not believe in this Diamondbacks roster whatsoever. They had a Brinks truck literally back them into the postseason, and they got to take on a Milwaukee team that just wasn't it and got taken advantage of that just god-awful division. I don't believe in this Diamondbacks team whatsoever. Clayton Kershaw has had some clunkers in the postseason for sure. I believe in Clayton Kershaw against a pretty mediocre lineup. All due respect to Corbin Carroll, all due respect to former Mariner legend Ketel Marte. I just don't see it. And this is not the first time we disagree, because we'll get into our starting pitchers in a sec, but I am going to stack the Phillies against Atlanta. Spencer Strider had a fantastic season. He was not good at the end of the year. He did have 11 strikeouts against the Phillies with 7 innings of 3-run baseball. But his last few starts, like there's a 2 2/3 innings against your world famous St. Louis Cardinals where he gave up 6 runs. There's 5 2/3 innings where he gave up 4 runs against Washington. His last start was 5 innings of 3-run baseball. He does get the win, and congratulations on him being the 20-game winner for the season. A lot of mediocre in between. And I just think this Philadelphia Philly team is so on a roll right now. They looked so good now, admittedly, against a Miami team that had no business being in the postseason, but looked good. They looked really good. I can't ignore what they did in the postseason last year. So I'm going with a stack, and I'm going to go with Bryce Harper. You may have heard of him. Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott, and JT Realmuto. Stott was fantastic in that series. Alec Boehm, a pretty nice little run too. JT Realmuto. This is just a really good Philadelphia lineup, and I could see this being a high-scoring game, but I really, spoiler alert, like the Phillies for not just this series, but for a few series after. I will stack that Philadelphia lineup. Drew, tell me why I'm wrong, and we can just get into the pitching. Well, I think I've got Spencer Strider.
Yeah, I'm going with Spencer Strider versus the Phillies. And yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and this is an obvious point maybe, but this feels like a very important game in terms of the Phillies' chances of like making another deep run, like almost a swing game, and that's kind of overdoing it. But if they can grab game one in Atlanta, get through Spencer Strider, they'd have a significant pitching advantage, like at least on paper, the rest of the way with Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola lining up for 3 of the next 4 games. That's the script that would get the Phillies through, if scripts can be followed in the postseason. But I see it going differently in this game one matchup, with Strider putting together a dominant high strikeout performance on extra rest, a lot of extra rest at home in Truist Park. Atlanta obviously has the hitting advantage over everybody. and maybe not so much the pitching advantage, but they have the best swing and miss starting pitcher in baseball going in the opener of the NLDS. There's a reason they're a fairly heavy betting favorite in this series and to win the World Series. Strider racked up 281 strikeouts over 186 innings during the regular season. His career strikeouts per nine is 13.6. That is bonkers for a starting
Yeah.
pitcher. He could be a pretty chalky play on Saturday's slate, but I don't want to miss out on the whiffs that Strider can generate against this Phillies lineup. Philly had the 8th most strikeouts of any offense during the regular season. Those numbers were better against righties. They hit well against righties in general. I definitely think the Phillies have a fine chance to beat the NL East champions in advance. This series is going to be wild. I think it could go to Game 5, but I like the Braves to take Game 1 at home on Saturday behind a locked-in Strider. Yeah, maybe there are some runs scored against him. You mentioned he had a 5.67 ERA, I believe it was, over his final 6 starts, a 3.86 ERA for the year. That's like not dominant stuff. He fell way out of the NL Cy Young race. But hopefully that'll just knock down the roster percentage for me as I go strikeout hunting with baseball's best strikeout pitcher. I'm targeting the K's and a win for Atlanta in Game 1.
I think you might get one of them, but only one of them. I'm going to go with Justin Verlander. I loved how he looked at the end of the year. Unfortunately, I loved how he looked in a huge start against the Mariners that basically knocked them out of postseason contention. 8 innings of 1-run baseball with 1 walk and 8 strikeouts. And then he followed that up with 5 innings of scoreless baseball against apparently the best team in baseball, according to Drew and the Arizona Diamondbacks. Pretty good for him to shut out that amazing juggernaut team that won 84 games. He looked good at the end of the season. And this is the reason why you trade for a guy like Justin Verlander. Now, it is worth pointing out that Justin Verlander has had postseason struggles. He is kind of viewed as this huge big game pitcher. You take a look at his postseason numbers, not quite as good as you might think. But I do like him against a Twins team that, look, they advanced because of their starting pitching. That's the reason why they advanced to this thing. It's not like they went off offensively. And I think they're probably due for a loss after winning 2 straight games against Toronto. Having to play that first game in Houston is a big thing as well. I expect Justin Verlander maybe not to pile up the strikeouts, although Minnesota is a team that swings and misses an awful lot. But I do like the Houston Astros to get a Game 1 victory.
My second starter that I'm recommending is Dane Dunning at the Orioles. Strider was my chalky play among the options for Saturday's big Game 1 slate. Dunning's going to be my more contrarian play, like the Diamondbacks. I think you just got to think a little bit contrarian when you're like building a DFS lineup. And if it doesn't work out, you threw a dart. The season-long totals for Dunning, don't scream, gotta have this guy in a DFS lineup. 3.70 ERA, 1.26 WHIP, and 7.3 strikeouts per nine. But some of that was inflated. A lot of that was inflated by the first month of the season, which he spent in the Rangers bullpen. They were kind of forced to put him into the rotation with some injuries early on. And as a starter this year, the numbers were better. A 3.55 ERA, 7.7 K per nine, compared to a 4.56 ERA and 5.3 K per nine while working in relief. His strikeout rate was further turned up a notch down the stretch, 72 strikeouts over his final 65 and 2/3 innings. This is a tough matchup for him. Baltimore did brilliant work in platooning this year. Well, had a top 10 combined OPS against left-handed pitchers, but ranked 16th in combined team OPS against righties. Dunning as a righty was at his best when facing right-handed hitters, just following the data here. But I think Dunning's flying under the radar after what Jordan Montgomery and Nathan Eovaldi did in games 1 and 2 of the wild card series against the Rays. Texas could have just played it back and lined those two up to work the opening games of their best of 5 ALDS matchup versus the Orioles, but they're going to trust Dunning in Game 1 and go more naturally with normal, even extended rest for Montgomery and Eovaldi. It sets up well for them not having to play that Game 3 in the wild card round, and hopefully they'll trust Dunning to work as deep as Montgomery and Eovaldi did last round. With the bullpen being a little shaky. That's quite clearly the Rangers' weakness if you had to pick one, the relief corps. So they're going to try to avoid using him. So I see Dunning being allowed to pitch through some early signs of trouble if there are some. I like the Rangers offense to produce Saturday in Baltimore, as I laid out earlier, and for Dunning to have a good shot at a win with decent run prevention and some Ks. Like I'm kind of all about the Rangers right now, even though I'm probably rooting for the Orioles. Spent the first 10 years of my life as an Orioles fan living in the DC area before the Nationals arrived. There's a Cal Ripken Jr. poster over there that I don't know. I've had since a long time. I'm 36 years old now. Shouldn't have probably posters of sports players on my wall, but my wife wouldn't let any of the sports memorabilia go into like our living room, so it's all in our guest bedroom and slash my office. But yeah, I like the way this all sets up for the Rangers. A lot of eggs in their basket for game one.
Yeah, I like that call. And here's the thing: like, it's definitely the contrarian play. And can I see Dunning having a tough start? Of course I can, because that Baltimore team can flat out hit. But I can also see success. Especially that Baltimore team is lacking in postseason experience. We'll see how big the situation gets. Like, I do love what they have built in Baltimore. I don't love their ownership group, but I do love what they have done in terms of what they have like sustained winning. You talk about it a lot. You hear GMs bring it about. They've got something special going on there. I just wonder if the first game might be a little bit of a tough one, and maybe they settle in as the series goes. Drew, I'm going to give you a date, and that was May 27th. And that was the last time that Clayton Kershaw allowed more than 3 runs in one start. Like, you can say whatever you want about his postseason ERA. You can bring up the fact that he's 35 going on 160. You can talk about the fact that he's no longer an elite bat misser. He's a really effective pitcher, and he has been effective throughout the season. Of course, did miss some time with injury, which is definitely something that you had to be cognizant of, but looks healthy right now, pitched outstanding down the stretch. I just think that he is going to give you a solid 6 innings of 2 runs or fewer baseball and get the W. It's not going to be the sexiest outing. It's never going to be again. You're going to see a lot of hitters swing and miss at 78-mile-per-hour curveballs that look like they're right at the letters. That's just the Clayton version of Clayton Kershaw that we got right now. But it's still a really effective one. I don't think a lot of people are going to be using him when you have big bat-missing guys like Spencer Strider on the mound. I'll take Kershaw knowing that I may lose the strikeout battle a little bit, but he's going to give me that win, and he's going to give me a low ERA as well. I like Kershaw for this one. Okay, let's make our postseason predictions, Drew. We'll start in the AL. Who wins these 2 series and in how many games?
You go first.
Okay. That's fair. I will go.
I wanted to pass the buck.
I will go Orioles in 5. I think that ultimately having the home field advantage is going to be the big difference there. And then I'm going to go. I really would love to see the Minnesota Twins win this series as a Seattle Mariner fan, and just as a person who would love to see that team have some sustained success. I can't go against the Astros. I'll go Astros in 4.
Is that how they do it on like First Take or whatever the Skip Bayless show is called? Like, just you go first.
Yeah, that's totally it. Embrace debate. No, it's like I'm not embracing anything.
I wanted to hear your points first, and then I was gonna, just rally off those and scream at you. I like the Rangers. I think they could get it done in 4. Like I said earlier, I think they had the offensive edge and the starting pitching edge at least. It could be trouble if Dunning has a bad start in game 1. Then it sets up really nicely for Baltimore all of a sudden. Obvious point being obvious, like all these game 1s are pivotal in a best of 5 series. And then I like Houston to get it done against the Twins. I think it's going to be uglier than what we saw last year. Like, I like a lot of their bats are kind of the Houston bats are kind of underpriced on DFS sites. Like Jeremy Pena is a very cheap shortstop. He was incredible in the postseason last year. I don't know like what that means, but it's a data point for me that like this is not going to be too big of a stage for him. They're going to be ready to rock, and they could totally kind of bull rush the Twins. I don't know if it's gonna be like a dominating series, but they have enough all around to get it done. I mean, they're gonna have Jose Urquidy, JP France, and Hunter Brown in the bullpen. That kind of like long relief just in storage almost is like a really incredible
Sure.
advantage in the postseason and a best of 5 series and a best of 7 series. I like Houston and Houston, Texas to get it done on the AL side of the
That'd be a
bracket.
fun one. It would be fun to see like a nice little division matchup, kind of like we do have, in the National League as well. Real quick, before we get into the National League, please make sure you're checking out the Contrarian Edge Optimizer. It is awesome tool. If you're watching us on YouTube, there's a little code right below my beautiful mug that you can scan. You can also go to fantasysportslogic.com or sportstopia.io, and we cannot recommend Sportstopia.io enough. We've got great lineup suggestions. We've got great stuff for the over-under pick'em games. Those are so fun to play, and you can get an edge by checking us out and seeing what we're seeing. We've got great football stuff. We're going to have more great basketball stuff coming up as well. Please check it out. All right, National League. I'm going to make you go first this time, Drubert.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Atlanta over the Phillies. I do worry about the Braves pitching situation. Like, Max Fried battled a blister down the stretch. I didn't think that was a big deal, but it kept
Yeah,
lingering. Like, it lingered throughout all of
sure.
September. He threw a 5-inning intra-squad game on Tuesday, but had a bandage on his blister the entire time. He's not going to be allowed to use that in a game. This thing has lingered. I'd be a little bit concerned about that, a little bit concerned about how Strider finished the year, and then Bryce Elder in game 3, who like had some really promising flashes throughout the regular season, but not, I don't know, like not it's going to be a super reliable postseason starter. But I think that offense gets it done. It was a record-setting offense during the regular season, and maybe the pitching will be fine. I'd like the Dodgers to ultimately win against the Diamondbacks. I just kind of like the Diamondbacks to win a game or two in this series to make it somewhat interesting. And I agree, on paper, the Dodgers are a whole lot better. You can see it in the NL West standings, but the pesky Diamondbacks, man, like they've been my team all year. They're my team in like the preseason win totals. I like them to keep it rolling. Corbin Carroll is going to be the
Yeah,
superstar.
he's going to be really, really good, and he's going to enjoy a 3-game sweep and get to enjoy some really nice weather. And then I liked Philadelphia. Like, I picked Philadelphia to win the World Series
Yeah.
before. I'm going to go Phillies. I'm actually going to go Phillies in 4. I think the fact that they get the chance to reset their rotation is massive. The days off, the way they've spread everything out, I think that's going to be really big. I don't know what you're going to get from Max Fried, and I don't know what you're going to get from Bryce Elder. And we talked about it before. Spencer Strider, lots of bat missing, pretty mediocre results in his last few starts. Here's the thing. Atlanta's lineup's really good. Here's the other thing, Drew. Of the last 54 teams that have had the best record in baseball, how many of them do you think have won the World Series?
3.
14. So 14 out of
Okay.
54, Drew. That's not much.
It's like winning the President's Cup in hockey. Like, you don't want it. No one
I
touches it.
love that. I like it. That's exactly what it is. It is, or the Community
Yeah.
Shield, or whatever they call it in MLS right now.
The Supporters Shield in MLS.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But yeah, I'm going to go with Philadelphia to win those, and I think any of these matchups that we can get are going to be awesome LCSs. Like, they're going to be some really good baseball teams that are going on. Minnesota and Arizona probably, maybe less deserving so than the other teams that we're talking about. But
That'd be awesome
oh
if that was
my
the
gosh,
World
Rob
Series.
Manfred would
I'd love it.
just throw the biggest fit in the entire world. It would change the
Good.
rules.
I'd
Oh
love to
yeah,
see it.
it would be not a disappointing thing. Thank you so much for checking out the Fantasy Fire and Ice podcast. We'd appreciate you guys checking out all of our socials. You can follow us on whatever they call the website now. Drew is at Drew Silv. I am at Crawford_MILB. Please hit like and subscribe on YouTube if you're watching. We really appreciate the support, and we will be back next week. See you guys soon.